but otherwise we'll be just skimming through the subject at a rapid pace. Yeah, so that's why I asked everyone to quickly go through the translations. That way we have some context on what we are reading and discussing. Okay, so chapter 1. So everyone already knows the context for the Bhagavad Gita being spoken by Lord Krishna. So I'll not discuss that. So overall, Bhagavad Gita chapter 1 has 3 subsections. And the first 11 verses is focused on the preparation for war. It begins with the Dhritarashtra's questions in the first sloka. He would ask, what did the people after being assembled do in the Kurukshetra? Basically, he was not there. He is actually in his own kingdom, and he is with Sanjaya. Sanjaya had Divya Drishti to oversee what is happening in the Kurukshetra war. So he would be relating what exactly happens there to Dhritarashtra. So it begins with a question by Dhritarashtra. So, and then a few more slokas. So what we will do, we'll quickly do reading of the verses, not the verses themselves because it will take time. So we'll just go through the translations. Everybody can open the first chapter. If you have online copy, you can go to vedabase.io and open Bhagavad Gita chapter 1. I can share the link. Chat. So you can open this. We'll just go through the translations. Or, one of you can read first 11 translations. Can anybody volunteer to read? Who would like to read?
I can read from.
Please read first 11 verses.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Dhritarashtra said, O Sanjaya, after my sons and the sons of Pandu assembled in the place of pilgrimage at Kurukshetra, desiring to fight, what did they do? Text 2. Sanjaya said, O king, after looking over the army arranged in the military formation by the sons of Pandu, King Duryodhana went to his teacher and spoke the following words. O my teacher, behold the great army of the sons of Pandu, so expertly arranged by your intelligent disciple, the son of Drupada. Here in this army are many heroic bowmen equal in fighting to Bhima and Arjuna, great fighters like Yuyudhana, Virata, and Drupada. There are also great heroic powerful fighters like Drishtaketu, Chekitana, Kashiraja, Purujit, Kuntibhoja, and Saibya. There are the mighty Yudhamanyu, the very powerful Uttamauja, the son of Subhadra, and the sons of Draupadi. All these warriors are great chariot fighters. But for your information, O best of the Brahmanas, let me tell you about the captains who are especially qualified to lead my military force. There are personalities like you, Bhishma, Karna, Kripa, Ashwathama, Vikarna, and the son of Somadatta called Bhurisrava, who are always victorious in battle. There are many other heroes who are prepared to lay down their lives for my sake. All of them are well equipped with different kinds of weapons, and all are experienced in military science. Our strength is immeasurable, and we are perfectly protected by grandfather Bhishma, whereas the strength of the Pandavas carefully protected by Bhima is limited. All of you must now give full support to grandfather Bhishma as you stand at your respective strategic points of entrance into the phalanx of the army.
Yes, bro. So we'll stop here, 1 to 13. So this section is preparation for war. So we heard about Duryodhana speaking about the party on his side as well as the opponents. So basically, in the battle of life, we also go through. We also have two types of people. One is Duryodhana. The literal word of literally Duryodhana literally means a bad warrior. Duryodhana. Yodhana means warrior, and Duryo means Dur means actually bad. So that is one type of warrior. And the other type is Yudhishthira. Yudh means battle. Sthira means a person who is steady. Okay. So Yudhishthira is a person who is steady in the battle of life. We all go through battles of life. And there can be two categories of people. Either one could be a bad warrior like Duryodhana or a steady warrior like Yudhishthira. So what's the difference between these two types of people? So Duryodhana makes pleasures as the priority of life over following the principles. If you look at all his incidents of life, it is always pleasure that is prioritized in his life. But compared with Yudhishthira, he would always follow dharma. That's why he's called Dharma Raja. Right? He always puts principles over pleasure. That's the difference between the two personalities we are discussing. And we as human beings, we also have to go through constant battles in life. And so is our type Duryodhana type or Yudhishthira type? That's what determines the result of what we face as battles in life. Okay. So yeah. So there was a research done by a scientist who looks at the ecological cycle, and he determined that there is one living entity, if it doesn't exist in this creation, that causes no problem to the ecological cycle. Who is that? Anyone knows? Meaning,
humans probably.
it's only humans. If they don't exist, there is no problem at all for the ecological cycle. Every other living entity is part of a cycle, meaning their existence is required for those who depend on that for its food. But there is just this one form of life that has no need for its existence within this ecological cycle. So as human beings, we all can either contribute to the betterment of this world, or we could be the destroyers of the surroundings. Okay. So as we face battles of life, do we put the principles or pleasures? That determines whether we actually contribute to contribute to everything around us, not just surrounding physical, not only nature, but the people or anything around, right? So if we put principles first, then we actually contribute to this world. So if we apply the first section, right, preparation for war. What is the main lesson? We need to follow the principles. Sorry, we need to put the principles first and follow them. Yeah. So the other point, yeah. So what is a principle? Principle is, in other words, known as dharma. Universal truths that sustain the very fabric of this universe is called dharma. If we don't follow dharma, it will hurt us only. It's never, we can't break the principles, but we can only break our head against them. That's what is mentioned, right? We cannot break the universal principles. We only have to follow them. Yeah. So the first section, the primary lesson is we have to put the principles first. Look at these examples on how Duryodhana was thinking about the strengths on his side and the opposing side, all measuring for his own pleasure, right? For success. He's just playing words to encourage his his party. He always is a person who actually puts pleasure over principles. And if we do the same, we'll all be again face the life of a Duryodhana. Yeah. So what is the lesson for us? So we also have to put principles first in our life, okay? Which means right now our life is okay, normal, we are healthy, we are still young, not like 60 plus. Now when we follow spiritual principles sincerely, when we have good times, when we follow the principles sincerely, then when we are in trouble, okay, when we are old age or we face financial issues or family issues, when we face challenges of death in family, or then we stay strong because we are steady at the time, because we have worked upon on the principles. Groundwork is done, right? So the more you sweat in peace, the less you bleed in war. So that's the preparation for war in terms of as an application for our life, right? So what is the primary application here in this section? So we need to sweat in peace, means work hard. When you work hard in Krishna consciousness, we are like, many people wonder, oh, why some devotees, they were they wake up early in the morning, they chant the holy names, they are very strict about eating prasadam only. So all these are principles. When we follow them, when we are studying life, they would help when we are in trouble, okay, when we are in the war. So that is the preparation for war that we want to do, okay, in Krishna consciousness. Yeah. So we all come across battles in life, but if we are well prepared, we can face them appropriately. Okay, this is the summary of section. Okay, next section, 14 to 20. Yeah, who can read it?
I can read it, Prabhuji.
Yeah, please. Sita Priti.
Yeah. Starting 12, right?
14.
14, okay. On the other side, both Lord Krishna and Arjuna, stationed on a great chariot, drawn by white horses, sounded their transcendental conch shells. Text 15. Lord Krishna blew his conch shell called Panchajna.
Panchajanya. Yeah.
Panchajanya. Arjuna blew his, the Devadatta and Bhima, the voracious eater and performer of Herculean task, blew his terrific conch shell called Pondra. Text 16 to 18. King Yudhishthira, the son of Kunti, blew his conch shell. The Ananta Vijaya and Nakula and Sahadev blew the Sughosha and Mani Pushpaka. That great archer, the king of Kasi, the great fighter Shikhandi, Drishtyumna, Virata, the unconquerable Satyaki, Drupada, the sons of Draupadi, and others, O king, such as the mighty armed son of Subhadra, all blew their respective conch shells. Text 19. The blowing of these different conch shells became uproarious, vibrating both in the sky and on the earth. It shattered the hearts of the son of Dhritarashtra. Text 20. At that time, Arjuna, the son of Pandu, seated in the chariot bearing the flag marked with Hanuman, took up his bow and prepared to shoot his arrows. O king, after looking at the sons of Dhritarashtra, drawn in military array, Arjuna then spoke to Lord Krishna these words.
Yes, thank you, Mataji. So in this section, this section is signs of victory for Pandavas. So there are many signs that were given here that are being discussed. If you notice this, there is names for the conch shells of each of the Pandavas, even and Lord Krishna. So that shows the very culture that existed during the time of Pandavas. Even a conch shell has its own position, and it is respectable. Uh, the war is also very cultured in those days. War would happen at the specific times from sunrise to sunset, and after the war is done, right, in the evening, all the parties would come together. They would have a nice conversation. There is no, even the opposing parties, I mean, it's not within the party. So the very good culture would exist in those days. Um, and and we may wonder, so the whole war setting is there, and Arjuna all of a sudden would ask Krishna, "Hey Krishna, take me, take the chariot between the two warring parties." And we may wonder, why people are waiting. They could just start, shooting and killing each other uh, in the time when Arjuna is actually going and asking. They could have taken advantage of the situation and did such an operation, right? Because the culture is so different. Right? The culture is Vedic culture is still in full force in those days. So nobody would start or start fighting unless signal is given. What is the signal in this war? Bhishma had to shoot the first arrow because he is the eldest and the chiefest of all the warriors assembled there. So he has to begin the war. Until then, nobody would. And surely everyone assembled there very much are interested in not Bhishma specifically. He is very much interested in what's happening between Arjuna and Krishna, and we know that he's definitely interested in Bhagavad Gita. So he wouldn't do anything until this conversation comes to an end. And the symptoms of victory are also presented in this section of Bhagavad Gita. So primarily on the chariot of Arjuna, there is the flag of Hanuman. I don't want to tell the whole story. Basically, Hanuman, just like he was helping the war of Rama with Ravana, he also wants to be part of this war between Pandavas and Kauravas and be on the side of Krishna, where Krishna is. So he wants to be on the specific chariot where Krishna is driving it. So that is one sign of victory. Hanuman, wherever Hanuman is there, there is always victory. And more than that, is Madhava, who is Krishna, he is on the side of Arjuna, who is Madhava literally means the husband of goddess of fortune. So wherever there is goddess of fortune, there is all victory, isn't it? So that is a great symbol of victory. And the sound of the conch shells that were blowing out have really petrified Kauravas because they are full of potency. And that's the third sign of victory for Pandavas. So at this point, after blowing conch shells and about to begin the war, sudden twist happens. Arjuna goes and requests, or not goes, Arjuna directly requests to Krishna, can I see who have assembled on the other side? Now everything is all set. The war is about to start. There is no need to ask such a well-known question that there are Kauravas, they are ready to fight, and we are Pandavas assembled here ready to fight. There is no point in asking that question. But that shows the beginning of doubt in the mind of Arjuna. He's not fully fixed up in fighting. He has this Gandiva bow, unconquerable Gandiva bow, but his will is not there. His heart is not in the war. Okay. So Arjuna, he was at home, he was fully ready to fight. Okay, let's do it tomorrow. Like that he was. And then as soon as he started looking at his grandfather, his uncles, his brothers, immediately his mind is blocked. So this is exactly how things work out in our life. So pratyaksha means direct perception, and anumana means basically analyzing on top of what we perceive. So when we only base our life on pratyaksha and anumana, just like Arjuna did in this context, what happens is we get bewildered. So when we base our life only on what we see and what we think in our mind, right, pratyaksha and anumana, we will get bewildered. Just that's exactly what there are signs of victory, and but immediately Arjuna got confused. Okay, yeah. So the signs of victory come in our life. In our life, how do they come? When we start seeing things through Shabda Pramana, Shabda or Sastra Chakshu. Okay, to see our life through the guide of Sastras, right? Through the knowledge of Sastras, when we see our life being directed by the wisdom of scriptures like Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, then all the difficulties that we go through in our life, they all can be perceived with meaning and purpose. Okay, and we see everything around us, everything would look like a tragic comedy. So the real sign of victory will be seen in our life when we start seeing the world through the Sastras. That is, then that's when we start seeing the signs of real victory. Okay, let's somebody read 21 to 27. Yeah, 21 to 27. Anybody?
Guruji, can I read?
Yes, Mathas. Yes, Mathas, please go ahead.
Yes, Prabhu. One second.
Only translations.
Only translations, Prabhu. 21 to
27.
O Arjuna. Arjuna said, O infallible one, please draw my chariot between the two armies so that I may see those present here who desire to fight and with whom I must contend in this great trial of arms. Let me see who have come here to fight, wishing to please the evil-minded son of Dhritarashtra. Text 24. Sanjaya said, O descendant of Bharata, having thus been addressed by Arjuna, Lord Krishna drew up the fine chariot in the midst of armies of both parties. Text 25. In the presence of Bhishma, Drona, and all the other chieftains of the world, the Lord said, just behold, Partha, all the Kurus assembled here. Text 26. There Arjuna could see within the midst of the armies of both parties his fathers, grandfathers, teachers, maternal uncles, brothers, sons, grandsons, friends, and also his fathers-in-law, and well-wishers. When the son of, text 27, when the son of Kunti, Arjuna, saw all these different grades of friends and relatives, he became overwhelmed with compassion and spoke thus. That's it, Prabhu.
Can you read the next one also?
Arjuna, text 28, Arjuna said, my dear Krishna, seeing my friends and relatives present before me in such a fighting spirit, I feel the limbs of my body quivering and my mouth drying up.
Yes, okay, let's stop there. So now symptoms are shown by Arjuna, so we can stop. So this whole thing is an arrangement of Krishna, actually, to teach Arjuna a lesson. Or, in other words, actually Arjuna is a pure devotee, so assume it is a lesson for all of us, okay? So Krishna put Arjuna in a state of consciousness so that he can teach through him lessons for us, because he is actually a Bhaktavatsala. He loves his children. You know, all of us are his children. So if you look at this, now Arjuna is on the chariot, and this is like introduction to Krishna. Okay, if you go to any movie, right, you will see how a hero is introduced. There will be whistles. You can think about movie of some actor like Chiranjeevi or anybody, right? As soon as he appears on the screen, oh, there is bugle sound, and there is the whole atmosphere changes. But here, Krishna is introduced as a chariot driver. Okay, so can any of us be willing to be servant of our own servant? No, right? But that is the position that Krishna is willing to take. He has no ego. He has no problem here to serve his devotees. So that was the introduction that is given. And now what Krishna does is, Arjuna gets this doubt. This guy, is bewildered, and okay, let's take this chariot between the two parties. And interestingly, Krishna would take the chariot exactly between his teacher and grandfather. Who are they? Anybody?
Drona and Bhishma.
Drona and Bhishma. Not if Arjuna was taken, for example, right, just before Karna, would he become like this? He would, let's fight now. or Arjuna is taken to Duryodhana. Okay, he will not be bewildered. He would think, let's fight this guy, kill this guy. But Krishna trickily takes him just between his teacher and grandfather, who he worships and loves. Now Arjuna loses his heart completely, because that's exactly what Krishna wants. Even our body is also like a chariot. Okay, Krishna as Paramatma in our heart drives our life towards those, different challenges in life that we really don't want to face. Right? We all go through different challenges, and they're all actually arrangements of Krishna. Those are like tests. That's exactly the thing that we don't want to deal. But you would face your manager, and you don't want a particular conversation to come up between you both. But that's exactly what your manager asks, right? That's exactly how life is, because we need to learn a lesson, and that's exactly how universe works. Universe is like a university, right? And in a university, or in a education system, you would get challenges according to your ability, isn't it? Will you ever get questions? If suppose you are in 5th grade, will you ever get questions in your test from 10th grade? You will never get. Exactly, that's exactly how universe also deals with us. It gives the challenges to make us stronger in our situation. Okay, so the challenges that we get in our life are actually tailor-made to address our current state of consciousness. This is the lesson. Okay, Krishna as Bhaktavatsala, he actually gives us challenges in life so that we can get better at those in facing those situations. He will never give challenges that we cannot really face. Okay, but unfortunately, and then what is the way out of the situation? We should ask Krishna in our heart, how do I handle this situation? But unfortunately, we don't have that personal connection with Krishna within our heart, isn't it? We are not so advanced that we're able to take guidance from Krishna within our heart. So what do we do in this situation? So that's the reason Krishna actually has given Bhagavad Gita, so that we can all study. Even though the same wisdom that he would give from inside, he would give through outside, through his book, through his wisdom. That is like a love letter of Krishna for all of us. So if we read every single day Bhagavad Gita, we get that direction from within the heart through Krishna, and we strengthen ourselves to face the situations of life. Yeah. So it gives solutions for head issues or heart issues, any issues. Everything has an answer. within Bhagavad Gita. So our sign of victory is basically, Krishna as Bhaktavatsala. How do we actually see in our life? We can see when we study Bhagavad Gita and apply those principles in our life and use those principles in the daily challenges we face. For example, now Chax Prabhu is going through some challenge with his father. He's in the very last stages. So he would call me and explain how exactly he's trying to raise his consciousness by studying Gita, making him hear Hare Krishna Mahamantra. So this is him now. But if suppose there is no Krishna conscious in his life, right? There is so much fear and anxiety because of what he's facing through Pratyaksha and Anumana. If we just use only those two in our life, we only think about how I can save my father through medical means, and there is no spiritual vision at all. Okay, but now with this background as Krishna consciousness, right, the whole perception changes. Now he knows what's going to happen in the near future, so he's preparing him. He's just like we read about preparation for war. So that will bring the real signs of victory for our life, for the people around us, if we are Krishna conscious, right? Otherwise, there is no hope in this material world. Okay. So Krishna is Bhaktavatsala because he is our father. Okay. If I ask any of the fathers or mothers here, right, between two people, right, the two people are parent and child. Who loves the other the most? Anybody? Child is young still, for example. Who loves the other most? The parent or the child? Who loves the other most?
Usually be the parent.
Yes, it's always the parent.
Parent.
Similarly, just like Krishna, we are all children of Krishna, right? So it is only Krishna that loves us the most. Actually, parenting is the most dissatisfaction industry because no parent is happy actually, frankly speaking. They want the best for the kids, but unfortunately, they are not tailor-made to accept what the parents say. So exactly between us and Krishna also. Krishna wants to be Krishna conscious and lead our life in a very systematic and very meaningful. But he is always tolerant. He's always loving. He's always caring, and he wants us to rise. He would give us only challenges that we can face in our life and grow through them. So that kind of ends the section. Now Arjuna now is ready with so many reasons on why he doesn't want to fight. Okay. Okay, let's read verse 28 to 46 quickly. 28 to 46. Who would read?
I can read, Prabhu.
Yeah, go ahead, Miss.
Arjuna said, "My dear Krishna, seeing my friends and relatives present before me in such a fighting spirit, I feel the limbs of my body quivering and my mouth drying up. My whole body is trembling, my hair is standing on end, my bow, Gandiva, is slipping from my hand and my skin is burning. I am now unable to stand here any longer. I am forgetting myself and my mind is reeling. I see only causes of misfortune. O Krishna, killer of the Kesi demon." Verse 31. I do not see how any good can come from killing my own kinsmen in this battle, nor can I, my dear Krishna, desiring any subsequent victory, kingdom, or happiness.
His reason started now. Let's go. Yeah.
So till 31, Prabhu, or more after that?
Go ahead, actually. You read till 36 and then other will read.
Okay, Prabhu. O Govinda, Of what avail to us are a kingdom, happiness, or even life itself, when all those for whom we may desire them are now arrayed on this battlefield? O Madhusudana, when teachers, fathers, sons, grandfathers, maternal uncles, father-in-law, grandsons, brother-in-law, and other relatives are ready to give up their lives and properties are standing before me, why should I wish to kill them, even though they might otherwise kill me? O maintainer of all living entities, I am not prepared to fight with them, even in exchange for the three worlds. Let alone this earth. What pleasure will we derive from killing the sons of Dhritarashtra? Verse 36. Okay.
You can stop here now. So there are
Okay.
primarily now he started giving various reasons. The first three verses, 28, 29, 30, they are basically talking about not killing his own relatives. Okay, it is basically compassion on the bodily platform. He doesn't want to see the misery of his relatives' bodies. Okay, and Krishna would speak to address this particular concern of Arjuna in the second chapter when he speaks from verse 30 or some 30 mid 30s. Basically, he gives Atma Jnana. No, not mid 30s, early 13 or 14th verse. So he would give the Atma Jnana to actually make Arjuna understand that compassion should be for the soul, not for the body. Okay, in the inevitable discharge of your duty, if it means to kill a body, that is all right. For example, a medical practitioner, right, a surgeon would ampute a gangrene. If the finger gets gangrene, right, he would amputate it. He wouldn't hesitate to amputate it because by amputating the finger, he would save the rest of the body. That's exactly how Krishna is seeing the whole situation. So he wants to establish Dharma, and in the process, he need to eliminate these unwanted leaders in the society. So his mission is to establish Dharma. So in the process, there is no need to show any material compassion. So we'll discuss that later in detail. But so that is how it is counted. So this is the wrong reason that Arjuna would give compassion. And second reason, 31 to 35, 31 to 35. So this talks about loss of enjoyment. Arjuna's point is, oh, if all these people who who are my relatives, if they are not there, who will be there for to share the joy or enjoyment after this war is over? Who is there with me to enjoy all these riches? If all my relatives die and I'm alone there, what is the joy in that? This is again a enjoyment on the bodily platform. Why? Actually, in this world, most people are happy not because of what they have in life. It is because others recognize what they have in life. That's what gives them satisfaction. The Onida's advertisement, right? Neighbor's envy is owner's pride. This is exactly. If you get, say, the best score in SAT or GRE or whatever, you will not be so happy until someone else recognizes it. We want recognition. So that's exactly the kind of enjoyment Arjuna is looking for in this by speaking these words. Who is there to enjoy with? Nobody is there. Krishna would bring him to right wisdom by informing that actually the real enjoyment is where it's on the spiritual platform. It's not on the material platform. When you stick to spiritual principles, that's when you get real enjoyment. The bodily enjoyment is actually a temporary thing. We'll discuss more Krishna's answer in the next chapter. Yeah, next verse.
Prabhuji, one doubt. I didn't understand why do we think Arjuna is looking for appreciation here?
No. I'm just giving our own example Now, what Arjuna is saying is, if all these assembled Kurus die, including his own grandfather and maternal uncles, and of all these people die, who will be there for me when I become victorious and rule this kingdom? I want those people to be joyful with. What happiness is there in killing our own relatives and winning the war, and after the war there's nobody to enjoy with. But that is exactly how Arjuna spoke. But if you apply the same principle, that's actually bodily enjoyment. He's thinking about the bodies of his relatives as the source of enjoyment, isn't it? So now if you apply the same principle, the lesson we are trying to learn here is the enjoyment should be on the spiritual platform, not on the bodily platform. Hope that makes sense.
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Next, can anyone read? Sinful reactions, 36. Can you repeat again? 36 onwards. Can somebody read?
Myself, Prabhu?
Yeah, anybody.
Or anyone who wants to read, they can read also.
Yeah, I can read, Prabhuji. "36, Prabhuji.
Yeah, 36 to 38 is fear of sinful reactions.
Okay. Sin will overcome us if we slay such aggressors. Therefore, it is not proper for us to kill the sons of Dhritarashtra and our friends. What should we gain, O Krishna, husband of the goddess of fortune? And how could we be happy by killing our own kinsmen? O Janardana, although these men, their hearts overtaken by greed, see no fault in killing one's family or quarreling with friends, why should we, who can see the crime in destroying a family, engage in these acts of sin?
So now Arjuna is giving further reasons. Why should we kill? Why should we kill these aggressors? Even though they don't realize what's going on, we realize the sinful activity that we are going through in this situation. But Krishna's point is, there is no sin in killing these aggressors. Look at this Duryodhana. What did he do? He is trying to disrobe your own wife before the assembly. What kind of culture do they have? Do you think there is anything wrong in killing such an aggressor? No, nothing is wrong. So there is no sinful reaction by killing these guys. Okay, they have done all mischief that they deserve to be killed at this point. Okay, so there is no sin that would be incurred to Arjuna by participating in this war. Okay, so next. Can somebody else read?
Prabhu, quick question, Prabhuji.
Yes, Prabhu.
Yeah, Arjuna is raising all these questions to Krishna. So he is mentioning about basically he's acting on the bodily platform, right? So on the contrary, from the Kauravas side, Bhishma is already elevated. So he also came to the battle to fight with the Pandavas. So what is the principle that which Bhishma came to the battlefield to fight? Is it only because of his vow to protect the kingdom or something else?
That's the external reason. But the internal reason, as a devotee of Krishna, he wants to show the world the principle that even if you are a greatest warrior, but if you are on the wrong side, you would be, what did I say? Yeah, if you are on the wrong side, you would be the loser. That's the lesson through his life he wants to teach that. Okay. Lesson to teach to the world, but that's exactly what Acharya says. Even if you are the greatest warrior, but if you are siding with the wrong people,
that is for the external people. Whoever is seeing from the outside world, they see that okay, since Bhishma is on the wrong side, so that is the result everyone will get. But internally within his mind, what was that inner principle that he is abiding?
No, this is inner principle.
Oh, this inner principle?
Yeah. The external principle is that he took a vow to always be on the side of the ruling party in the Kuru dynasty.
Okay.
Another reason is devotees, even through unexpected actions, they teach lessons. Yeah, this is a completely unexpected action, right? Externally, but through this also he's teaching the world a lesson. He knows very well who is Krishna. He knows.
Yeah.
Okay. He perfectly talked about all of these things in Bhishma, Bhishma Yoga, right? In Bhagavatam, he talks in sixth canto, he talks about exactly who is Krishna and this. Yeah, so he knows very well, but still he sides with Kauravas to show the world that even if you're the greatest warrior, you will be destroyed if you're on the wrong side. Yeah, next.
Okay, thank you.
Prabhu, I can read, Prabhu.
Yes, Madhus.
When irreligion is prominent in the family, O Krishna, the women of the family become polluted, and from the degradation of womanhood, O descendant of Vrishni, comes unwanted progeny. An increase of unwanted population certainly causes hellish life both for the family and for those who destroy the family tradition. The ancestors of such corrupt families fall down because the performances for offering them food and water are entirely stopped by the evil deeds of those who destroyed the family tradition and thus give rise to unwanted children. All kind of community project and family welfare activities are devastated. O Krishna, the maintainer of the people, I have heard by disciplic succession that those whose family traditions are destroyed dwell always in hell.
So in this section, Arjuna is talking about, he is very reasonable. He's talking about destruction of family tradition. If we kill all these men, the only people who are left are women, and unscrupulous people would take over and take advantage of the situation, and unwanted progeny would come, and they don't follow any principles. Very reasonable, but still the people who are being killed in this war, the Kauravas, they are all of this category only. The example I spoke about Draupadi being disrobed. So actually Krishna doesn't see any loss of family traditions in this. Okay, and the final reason given, so these are the four reasons: compassion, loss of enjoyment, fear of sinful reactions, and destruction of family traditions. These are the four reasons given in chapter 1. And the final reason why he doesn't want to fight is given in 2.6 in chapter 2. We'll discuss that tomorrow. Yeah. So now, yeah. So overall, can somebody read the last 3 verses?
Yeah, I can read, Prabhu. Yeah.
Sure.
44, Prabhu. 44.
44 to 46.
Yeah. Alas, how strange it is that we are preparing to commit greatly sinful acts. Driven by the desire to enjoy royal happiness, we are intent on killing our own kinsmen. 45. Better for me if sons of Dhritarashtra, weapons in hand, were to kill me unarmed and unresisting on the battlefield. Text 46. Sanjaya said, Arjuna, having thus spoken on the battlefield, cast aside his bow and arrows and sat down on the chariot, his mind overwhelmed with grief.
So now finally he gave up. He put his Gandiva bow down. Gandiva represents the will of a jiva to serve Krishna. That's exactly what happens in the life of a conditioned soul in this world. So just like Arjuna faced the battle of Kurukshetra, we all face battles in our life, and we give 5 reasons why we don't want to take to spiritual life or Krishna consciousness seriously. Or in other words, why you don't want to surrender to the will of God. Okay. And the first reason, just like Arjuna gave, compassion for the body. Okay. If I become a too serious devotee, I won't be showing compassion to body because I have to follow the regulative principles, isn't it? I have to, there is no intoxication, no illicit sex, and no gambling. All these principles I need to follow. Okay. So be compassionate to the body, man. When you become old, you can actually do all these things. So that is one reason why most conditioned souls don't want to take Krishna consciousness seriously. Compassion to their body. They don't want to follow the regulative principles. But actually, what are these regulative principles? For example, if you follow no intoxication, is that like a freedom, or is it like an imprisonment for you? Anybody? If you don't drink wine, for example, right? Is that a freedom, or is that an imprisonment?
It's a freedom, Prabhu, but then people who are addicted, it's hard for them to get out of that.
Right. Yeah, that's actually imprisonment. If you actually start doing intoxication, it's so difficult to give up. And every day you think about that. And once you get addicted to it. So regulative principles are actually regulative principles of freedom. They actually free us. Once you don't have this bad habit of intoxication, okay? Now your mind is freed up. So much of time, your time is taken out, in your endeavors to collect these bottles, or buy these, drink them, or thinking about drinking them. So much time is saved for you. So much time is saved. So it's actually a regulative principle of freedom. Similarly, with every other principle, every other regulative principle follow. It's actually a regulative principle of freedom because it gives us time back.
So also with any bad habit, I think, right, Prabhu?
Yes, that's true. Yeah. So this is one reason we give why we don't want to take. I'm just trying to apply the Arjuna's reasons to our life. Okay, compassion is one reason. Compassion to the body means violating the regulative principles. Okay, and then a loss of enjoyment. We say, okay, if I take to Krishna consciousness, I lose so many things. I can't eat this. I can't eat in hotel. I can't. There are so many restrictions on what I can do and what I can't do. Okay. But actually, all this enjoyment that we speak about, they're actually enjoyment on the bodily platform. Okay? And the real enjoyment is actually on the spiritual platform. So when we seek the higher taste, actually it is so easy to give up lower taste. So unless we experience spiritual joy, we cannot really give up material joy. That's why we have A, B, C, D, and E. Association, A for association, B for studying scriptures or Bhagavad Gita, books, C for chanting, D for diet or deity worship, and E for engagement in service. So when you do all of this, there is real Krishna conscious joy, isn't it? So there is no loss of enjoyment for Jiva by actually surrendering to Krishna. Yeah, many people express, oh, I was worshipping that deity and this deity. Will there be sinful reaction if I stop worshipping all of them and start worshipping Krishna? What does Krishna say? Sarva dharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja. So you don't need to worry. There is no sin by giving up any other dharma in favor of doing the dharma of surrendering your life to me. Krishna says, right? So there is no fear for sinful reactions. Finally, destruction of family traditions. We see in this world, one devotee was explaining how he had went to a traditional Gujarati family where he saw pictures of 4 generations. In the 4th generation, the oldest generation, the person was sitting in a nice chair. He was wearing dhoti kurta, having a nice tilak and all of that, right? And having a bead bag in the hands. And in the next generation, already he's wearing a tight shoes, and the whole dress is already modern. And in the 3rd generation, he is actually wearing completely modernized dress. So we already see there is so much destruction in family traditions. So even today's look at any birthday celebrations, at least before coming to Krishna consciousness, I remember, days in IIT, the way we used to celebrate is
Goloka family.
We actually raise the guy who has his birthday, right, and kick him on the back. That was the way of celebrating birthday. That is the show of love. Okay, so these are all actually the culture that we think that we have around us is giving us pleasure. These are all actually wrong traditions. By taking to Krishna consciousness, we actually understand the right. Now, how we celebrate birthdays, by wishing them, by praying for them. Okay, this is the right. So by actually coming to Krishna consciousness, by taking to Krishna consciousness, actually we stand for the real traditions, Vedic culture. Okay, so there is no need to worry that, oh, I'm missing my family traditions, we used to do like that. Okay, this is one practical application we can all take. Okay, so I think it's 3. Let's join Radheshyam Prabhu's class. I hope this is a very quick summary. We didn't discuss in depth. I discussed more about applications than, but so overall, if you remember, there are 4 sections in this verse. Remember like this, right? You're watching my video, okay? Preparation for war, signs of victory for Pandavas, Krishna is Bhaktavatsala, and Arjuna's indecision because of 5 reasons. Okay, so like that 4 sections were discussed, and I'll not revise. So next week we can quickly go. Okay, we'll stop here. Thank you all for joining.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Prabhu, Radheshyam Prabhu's that is a Zoom lecture or like?
Yes. Okay, Prabhu.
Prabhu, okay.
Stop now. I have to join that.
Okay, Prabhu. Prabhu, can you forward that one?
Yes.
Okay, Prabhu.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.